Okay, MM-1000 grounding problem. What I've got going on here, this is the breaker panel where the machine is actually switched on and off. And it normally mounts right here. And this is a 24 volt regulated supply. This is the control relay box. And then we have two 39 volt regulated supplies. And from the factory, the way the schematic is shown, as far as the grounding goes, this is the main connector, which is presently sitting inside the machine. And let's see. This is the ground. This TB1 is this screw terminal bus on the back of the breaker panel. So it shows the ground coming in. Oops, there we go. Coming in, going to the screw terminal, and also going to the chassis, and also going up to the 24 volt regulated supply. So here we have this cable, big fat black cable, is the other end of the socket, and then this is the actual power cable that plugs into the wall here. And I've got an extension cord to an outlet that I know is grounded. Ground is good, and I get about 84 millivolts of voltage differential between the neutral and ground leads. So I think that's okay. So the ground comes in, and ignore this green wire for a second. This is factory ground coming in, bused to this screw terminal, factory ground going out to a lug on this breaker panel, and that's it. That's as far as the ground goes. There should be, according to the schematic, another line going up to the socket, the input socket on the 24 volt supply, which is this one right here. And if you'll notice, maybe you can't see too well in the video, but there's two lines coming in and two lines going out. There's just hot and neutral in and out of this. There is a ground pin, and I've confirmed that it is connected to this chassis inside the supply, which is where it's supposed to go if you look at the 24 volt schematic. Okay, so we're missing that ground run there. And then the other piece of this is, if this is supposed to go to the chassis, is that an effective chassis ground connector? Because again, the problem I'm having here is my transport plate is hot. There's up to 80 or so volts with little or no current, but there's voltage there. So I'm going to show you some tests. My meter is set for continuity, and I have one lead clipped to a brake assembly on a reel motor, which of course is attached to the transport plate. Lots of good connectivity there. And then I have the other lead clamped to this lug. And now let's just pretend this is mounted on here. We'll push it up against there really good. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So I have no chassis ground in my MM-1000. And the result of that is, okay, let me clip this to ground again. We're gonna switch to measuring AC volts. that shows, let's see here. Okay, I think that's just noise. I think the freezer kicked on. So I think that's just measuring noise, about 95 millivolts. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it in now. Okay, immediately we have the 3.5 volts, and then when I turn the machine on, (106 volts) when measuring from essentially the transport plate here, because remember this is the real motor, which is direct connected metal to metal to the transport plate, and ground. No touch. Now I'll show you something else. I'll switch it off. Let's go back to continuity, and let's see if there's any continuity. Now these two wires here, this white one, okay, that's the neutral going out to the transport, and this is the hot going out to the transport. Let's measure for continuity between, actually let me unplug it first. Let's measure for continuity between the transport plate and the hot and neutral legs, which should test to see if we have a short somewhere, right? Okay, so I'm going from neutral to the transport plate. Nothing. Now I'm going from the hot out to the transport plate. Nothing. Okay, so according to that, there's no short. We know our ground is inadequate, and our plate is hot. And I did measure, where is it now? So I did some tests where I hooked a wire up to the transport plate and then connected in a bulb, and then the output of that bulb I connected to the ground, and it doesn't glow at all. This is a 120 volt 25 watt bulb. Nothing so much as a glimmer, so there isn't any noticeable current there at all. It's just voltage. So now I'm going to connect this wire between ground and the transport plate. Okay, so see now we can pay attention to this wire. This goes from ground, and it goes, I've got it screwed into the transport plate. So now we have a much better following of this ground to chassis, okay? The transport plate is now adequately grounded, and we can tell that because if I go between ground and the transport plate, we get, 0.2 ohms. That's a direct connection. And now if we switch back to AC volts, I'll plug it back in, and we turn it on. Let's see how many volts we got at the transport plate. 0.1 millivolts. So I seem to have solved the problem by creating that chassis ground to the transport plate, but my question is, does that seem right? Am I just masking another problem, or is this the proper solution? Was the lack of a good chassis ground the cause of the problem?